Hi there, Massy here, coach, strategist and author of a few books, and welcome to this video as part of my 5-video series on supporting coaches to move into the coaching business, maybe expand their coaching business, maybe go deeper into it, maybe go from part-time to full-time, but just some ideas that might support you on your coaching journey, and also to see where the coaching journey is in fact for you. So in this video, I'm going to just talk about some of my favorite tips, tools, strategies that I use in the coaching space and that I think that are most important. The first one for me, the most important thing for me as a skill, as a technique, as a tool to bring into the coaching conversation is to be 100% fully present. Not only fully present, but in an energetic state. If you followed any of Dr. Joe Dispenza's work, he would talk about elevated emotional state, high vibrational frequency. So I want to come into the conversation with every one of my clients in an elevated emotional state. So I'm very present, I'm very calm, but I've got this energy about myself. And I guess if I was to use a metaphor, it's like if someone's really struggling. Say I have a client come to me and they're quite anxious, they're quite agitated, they're struggling a little bit. The metaphor is if someone's in the water and they're, semi-drowning, flapping around and whatnot, I could jump into the water and try to help them up onto the jetty. Or I could stand on the jetty and reach down and pull them up to me. And that's what I want to do. I want to be in this high vibrational state. And one of the things, if you understand, whether it's quantum physics or understand energy and vibration, is something that's vibrating at a higher frequency will entrain something that's at a lower frequency. So if I've got this higher vibrational frequency and I have that person in front of me who's in a little bit more of a survival state, the power of my presence, the power of my energy and the power of holding this space starts to change the energy of that client, so they start to move up to where I am. And they move out of survival, and that's what is so powerful, is when we move out of survival and we start getting into the thriving space, into the creation space. So one of the ways I do that is just change the energy in the room. Because what tends to happen is when someone's anxious or stressed out, they're sort of pulling energy out the room. It's sort of like if someone walks into the room, some people suck energy out of the room. You've maybe had someone before, they've walked in the room and you can feel the energy being sucked out. And then there's another person that walks in the room that they've got this energy around them and it actually increases the amount of energy. So one of the best tools you can have is doing the work on yourself to create this energy where you've got this higher vibe energy, and you bring that into the conversation. So you don't need to ask any specific questions, you don't need to say anything like that, but just by showing up as that particular person with that sort of energy, you start to change what's happening at an internal level with that client in front of you. And when they get out of survival, then their mind starts to open up, then they can tap into creativity, then they can actually see a broader perspective on what it is that they truly want, and then we can help them along the way. So that's one of the most powerful things. The second one is, and the book here, The Successful Mind, goes into a lot more detail about, and specifically about our belief systems and our stories we tell in our frames of reference and our blueprint of the world. And what I find the most powerful thing I do with my clients is I listen to their stories, I listen to their narratives, I listen to what they're saying, and then I challenge it. Because the thing with beliefs, I'm going to choose a number here, it's not based on scientific fact, but it gives you an indication. Over 90% of beliefs, maybe over 95% of beliefs or over 99% of beliefs are made up. They're not universal laws. They're not laws that are chiseled in the stone. Gravity is a universal law. If we're heavier than air, regardless of who we are, how much money we've got in the bank, what's our race, what's our sexual persuasion, how old we are, none of that matters. If we're heavier than air, we go down 100% of the time for 100% of people. That's a universal law. Beliefs are these things where we say, oh, you can't make money in this environment, or I'll never make this work, or I'm not smart enough, blah, blah, blah. So part of our work is actually really tuning into our clients and listening to their stories. And when you find those stories, like catching them out on it, getting them to back up and getting them to repeat what they said, but bring it to their awareness that they actually said it. So we bring that, someone says, I'm never going to, make a success in this particular area of my life. And they just say it as a narrative that they've sort of thrown out. And you're like, back up, say that again, and then challenge the truth of it. So we've pulled up the story, we've identified a story, someone's saying that's a narrative that's not necessarily serving them, and then we start carving it to pieces. That's one of the best techniques you can use, is actually seeing the story, which becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy, backing up and reframing that story. And that's probably the third technique that I use most fully. Every single conversation I probably have is reframing something. So first of all, there's identifying someone's stories, and then it's reframing it, getting them to look at it from a different perspective. And again, if someone's in a survival state, they actually can't see that. So we get them into this different state, then they're seeing things from different directions, and we're getting them to consider the possibility that something else might also be true. So they've said this negative thing and they've bought into the idea that there's truth in that, but we sort of play around with it, reframe that, and we say, do you think if you sort of did it slightly like this, or you looked at it like this, or if you saw it from this perspective, would it still mean the same thing? Would you still have the same feelings and emotional response to that particular thing? If you maybe looked at it from this perspective and realised that it's not all bad, but there's some great things that come from it, which contributed to these other great things that happened in your life. And you're starting to reframe that experience for someone. And as you reframe it, they start to think about it differently. If they think about it differently, they feel about it differently. If they feel about it differently, they behave differently. If they behave differently, they're going to get different results. So we want to change what this internal dialogue is, and by reframing things, they can see it in different ways. Now, this is sometimes called an NLP technique, a neuro-linguistics programming technique, but it's also a good communicator, and a good communicator that's an optimist. An optimist is always looking at the brighter side of things. Pessimist is looking at what's wrong with it. The optimist is looking at what's right. So it's not a technique that you have to go and do an NLP course to get better at. It's just you looking at things from a different perspective. The other one for me is, it's a technique, or it's a tool, or it's a way of showing up, but it's curiosity. The more curious we are, the more we keep our attention at the high level of our brain. We're staying more at the frontal cortex of our brain when we're staying in curiosity. When we're judging, we're like, that's a lower vibrational frequency, that's a lower energy. And when we're judging, we're seeing right, wrong, black or white. Like, there's no creativity in judgment. So as a coach, I want to stay curious. And I want to be curious. And I'm like, oh, I'm so curious to understand, why do you say that? Why do you believe this particular thing? Why do you look at that and see that when I can look at it and see something else? And it's that curiosity and my curiosity, and I want to encourage my clients to be curious. Because when they're being curious, they're actually more likely to be creative and find creative solutions and find possibility in whatever it is they're doing. So curiosity is such a powerful tool, within this coaching relationship, also within ourselves. Stay curious, and curiosity and creativity fit beautifully together. And from a business perspective, one of the keys to making more money in business and keeping this financial flow is staying creative. And curiosity is entangled into that. So our business is directly proportionate to how creative we are in how we deliver our business and what products and offerings we create. I'm just looking at my list here. The last one I wanted to touch on is a concept, and I'd been doing this as a coaching practice, but I'd never heard the terminology before. But there's Michael Neal, who's an amazing coach and written a number of books about coaching. So he's worth checking out. Super Coach is one of his books. And working with him recently in a seminar, and he talked about this idea of loving disruption. And I love that concept as a coach. And what it means is, and I talked about these two different parts already, if I come in and I establish rapport with my client by just being open, by having this high vibrational frequency, by being fully present and committed to that person in front of me. And I even tell my clients at the start of the coaching session, you are the most important person in my life. You're more important than my girlfriend, you're more important than my dog, you're more important to my house, you're more important than my bank account, you're more important than everything. You know, right now, you are the most important person in my life. And that, if done with authenticity, and done from a place of integrity, and done with this energy field to match what's coming out of your mouth, gives it a sense of love and feeling non-judged. And when you have someone there and you create that relationship and that rapport, and they feel not judged by you, and they feel loved by you for whoever they are and however they're showing up. Once you have that relationship with someone, then you can do the second part of the process, which is disrupt. And that disruption is like when we asked them about their stories, and then we start challenging their stories and the truth of their stories. Now, if I go into that coaching conversation and I start challenging their stories before I've created that loving environment, that non-judgmental space, they're going to reject it and they're probably going to close down. So one of the keys to coaching is creating that relationship. Step one, create that loving, supportive, non-judgmental, high vibe, curious space. Create that environment. And then when you go into the coaching conversation, then you can disrupt and challenge some of the stories. Because they've got the life experience they have because of the stories they've been telling, the stories they've bought into. So if they want a different life experience, and we reverse engineer it, and we look at what are the stories they're telling, which is creating this experience. And if I want a different experience, I need to tell a different story. I need to disrupt their story. But again, I don't do that unless I've established that space of rapport. So there you go, just a few techniques to get you started on your way. And again, if you want to reach out to me, you want to ask any questions, and even if you want to ask about these particular techniques or something that's come up for you, I'm more than happy to help out. So just send me an email, carl@carlmassy.com, and you can get the details from my website contact page. Just reach out and ask that question. And if you think you might be interested in working with me a little bit deeper through an apprenticeship, just send me an email and we'll work out whether we're the right fit for each other. And if there is that, that rapport between us, if we do come together, well, then great, we start a coaching relationship or a coach and apprenticeship relationship. But again, I will not work with anyone if I don't feel that we're the right mix for each other. So reach out and see whether we are. If some of the stuff that I've talked today resonates for you, let me know. Other than that, all the best on your own coaching journey, whether that's with me or with someone else. I wish you all the very best. I think it's a beautiful profession, making the world a better place. So have a fantastic day and take care.